Hey everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the Snapchat. Today I'm joined, as always, by none other than Cozy Snap. Cozy, how you doing today, my friend?
What's up, man? Doing good, feeling good. It is almost the end of February. Can't believe it. It's just blowing by, man. Marvel Snap has been out for multiple months. Absolutely wild. Great, though. How about yourself, man?
It's been good. I mean, you mentioned blowing by. It's literally, I'm in the middle of a storm. I hope that this signal doesn't cut out and my internet doesn't go black because, literally my house is shaking as I'm recording this. But you're right. Marvel Snap, although it's been out for just such a short little while, it has continued to surprise us each and every week. And this week has been one of the most volatile weeks with all the changes. The meta is completely upside down. And I got to tell you, there is so much to talk about, including series drop recommendations, the Sandman meta, and of course the top tournament cards for February 2023. We have 2022 there, but we get confused sometimes. But at the end of the day, guys, it's all about figuring out what cards can be the top performers in tournament settings, which are becoming increasingly more popular, Cozy.
Yeah, man. So we're going to be talking about the winners and losers of the most recent patch. We have the deadliest Deadpool decks with the brand new bundle. We're going to break those down in the synergy he has. And then we have favorite cards at every cost. Me and Alex's favorite segment that we do each month. Not the best, but our favorites and the ones that are also competitive. But Alex, we got some good subjects on this side. I'm excited to talk about the series drops because Sandman and all the other changes and just wildness has gotten more attention than the new series drops that I know is very important to a lot of players. So I'm excited.
Cozy, these series drops are a huge deal because when you actually reduce the cost and give additional availability to these cards, it gets into more decks. You get more kind of building options, more tech options for people all across different collection levels of Marvel Snap. So I'm most interested in starting at Series 4 to the Series 3 drop because I think that's going to give a lot of people the most excitement. They're going to cost 1,000 tokens now, and it's going to be in the hands of more people. These cards are Helicarrier, Agent Coulson, and Maria Hill. Let's start with Maria Hill. Cozy, what are your thoughts about Maria Hill getting into Pool 3? Is it the kind of card that you think is worth spending 1,000 tokens on?
Yeah, it's like the S.H.I.E.L.D. package. We got all the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and, she's definitely on the list. I think her and Helicarrier are ones that you can just kind of wait to unlock, let them pass by, especially because they're in competition with Pool 3 cards and there's much better ones. I will say they're a bit slept on. I do think they're better than they get credit for. I think she's very good in Lockjaw decks. In fact, insanely great. And then she can also work in a bunch of other kind of niche situations. Good with Quinjet, you get a free play. She has some fun card generation with the one-cost cards. The Zoo deck, it has some good synergy as well. But she's not worth the tokens. It's great that you can have a better chance to unlock her, and she does fit into some other decks. But I enjoy playing the card. Have you messed around with her much?
I have played her a little bit, and I do find her to be an interesting card, but I agree 100% with your sentiment that, she's not a required card by any means. In Pool 3, there are so many cards that really pull their weight. Maria Hill is one that can be kind of weighted on, as with Helicarrier, I think. Can we just talk about Agent Coulson for a second, though? Because if you are a Devil Dinosaur enjoyer, which you can be all the way from Pool 1, Agent Coulson is a god tier card. I have grown to absolutely love this card. It is a good one. Tell me about your thoughts around Agent Coulson.
Yeah, so it's up there in my favorite cards in the game currently. I've been playing it in all of my decks. The Quinjet interaction, really, I've taken the battle mode concept and tried to apply it to the ladder, really mixing it up and letting him decide what kind of deck I'm going to play or the closing turns. He's also great if you don't have a lot of cheap, if your deck design's weird on its cost flow, you get a guaranteed curve with the card as well. Like that can't be undermined. And I still will say it, pretty much every 5-cost card is fire. Now we have Sandman in that kind of mix as well. And then the 4-cost cards are good setup cards that usually can work in. The 5 costs are much better, but man, I love Coulson. And I think he is way better than just Devil Dinosaur. He's great with Collector and just fits as a plug-and-play card for 3 costs.
There's no question that Coulson does fit so many different roles, and he just gives so much different value, and obviously is extremely unpredictable to play against. So that's one of the reasons why I like him. And of the 3, between Maria Hill, Coulson, and Helicarrier, I tend to lean towards Coulson being the best one here by far. But Helicarrier is interesting, especially now that we're in MODOK season, right? And Helicarrier definitely has some synergy with MODOK, definitely synergy with Collector as well. How have you used Helicarrier in the past? Because for me, it can somewhat be a bit of an awkward build around, but when it lands, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, so on Agent Coulson, when I spend 1,000 tokens, probably one of the more tricky answers. It's very tough. If you do nothing but battle mode, I would buy him. If you like Devil Dinosaur, then you can use him there. It's tough. There's a lot of competition, and tokens don't come by often. But for Helicarrier, First of all, the variant I got made me want to play the card more. I can tell you that. If you don't play it in Hella decks, it can be a bit clunky. I do like the idea of having it provide some boost towards with the collector and the way that it works. It's a 10 power drop with an added condition. It seems like a card that could be better than it is, and I don't play it all that much, but I can say it's a decent card. I think Coulson, runs miles around the card, but I do think that Helicarrier is pretty solid.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I think that it's an extremely niche card. And closing out our conversation about the series 4 to 3 drops, I think it's fair to say that Coulson is by far our favorite, but it's up to each individual person to kind of determine where you're going to spend your tokens. I personally would not spend tokens on Maria Hill or on Helicarrier. Agent Coulson, I would even consider waiting on too. But if you have an absolutely blessed Devil Dinosaur list as your favorite card and you just love playing it, then it can work. Or you do lots of battle mode and you want to compete in tournaments and stuff like that, then all of a sudden the card opens up completely, right? But each person's going to have a unique perspective on that. But I do agree with your sentiment that tokens are really hard to come by, right? So you might want to wait because, you're going to get these, right? You're going to get these Pool 3 cards relatively sooner than later. So maybe save those tokens.
Yeah, it comes down to me with token spin. It comes down to, can another card do its spot? And honestly, Helicarrier, man, I'm sorry, but there's 50 other cards you can put in its spot in Hella decks and the ways that you use it. Whereas Coulson is a bit more different. There's not a lot of 2-card producers, especially with 3 costs. So that's why I even think Maria Hill, there's definitely cards that can do that role as well. So that's where I give the edge to Coulson. But yeah, it doesn't mean they're not good cards. Just token-wise, it's a bit tougher. But what about the 5 to 4 drops, man? You get the Pool 5, pretty much cards that didn't even exist to most players are now at least somewhat obtainable.
Yeah, so in that series drop here, we do have Silver Surfer, Darkhawk, Null, and Sentry. So let's take a second here. We'll start with Silver Surfer because that card has been in the news quite a bit. Recently got nerfed. Is it a nerf? It was a nerf, I guess, moving from 3 power to 2 across the board. But you do get the 3-2. It was a 3-0 prior. How do you feel about Silver Surfer? Because me personally, I still think it's a pretty good card. I don't think the identity got damaged too much. And I think that it could be worth it for people looking to kind of add a little bit of flair into their decks. But this Sandman buff has got me concerned about spending tokens on a combo-centric card that you play on turn 6.
Yeah, I mean, you just answered my reply in your own thing there. I think I was going to say a day ago, if you asked me, I would love Surfer. Again, is it worth the tokens? Currently, there's other cards. I mean, again, he is awesome for surprising. Sandman messed him up. Wait for a bit, and let the Sandman thing settle down. But I do like Surfer a ton as a card. You would be waiting for a long time to have him at 1,000 tokens, so I think he can work into decks. The best part about him is he's very plug and play, and I use that all the time, but it's for good measure, right? Silver Surfer can work with multiple archetypes, and anytime you have a card that can do that, it's probably worth it. But again, make sure your Pool 3 complete and all those things. But really good card, I think, overall. Definitely did go down a bit in value, and Sandman kind of messed his day up. And the other, we had what? Sentry? Oh, Sentry.
Sentry's one we can talk about too. Yeah, Sentry basically finds itself into Pool 4. This is got to be the easiest do not buy recommendation in history. I would even suggest just make this Pool 1, but then we don't want new players to hate Marvel Snap right off the bat, do we? What do we do with Sentry? Do you just let him rot in Pool 3? What do you do? Because you don't want to spend 3,000 tokens on him.
No. There's cards that people don't use, and you can try to say, why he's slept on, whatever. And I've heard a few try to stand up. Guys, Sentry's value is pretty much not there. And yes, you can keep going back to the Viper, the Void. Hey, you can have a lot of fun with that. The few games that you get the right pulls with the right timing, with the right cost, with the right locations. And he is a weird card, especially because his competition is not hard to get it out there. You have 2 less with White Queen. You have Crossbones. That's easy. Namor's freaking an 11 now in 1 lane. And so this -8 is just, it sucks. It's a lot. And I think there's ways to make him work. But definitely, man, let him pass. Let him just open him up in Pool 3 one day in the future with Sentry.
And it kind of messes up like synergy with like Destroy too, because you can't use Null with him. I know people really fixate on that Viper play, but like you really want to play Viper on turn 5? Like with what? You know what I mean? It's like, it's just not that great. Yes, you have the synergy with the, right lane bar with no name, but if you win that, send me the clip. Like at the end of the day, like I think Sentry's awful. Like I wouldn't even send him to pool 1 because, we don't want pool 1 players to be like, really, this is what I got. Pool 2, like you kind of get warmed up with the game. Maybe you can absorb a weak draw. Pool 3, you don't want to pull this. You don't want to pull this in Series 4. I'm going to pull Sentry in Series 4. This is the problem. And I'm going to be so upset.
He feels like he would be so much better as a 5 cost because of even just looking at 4 cost cards. If he was a 5 cost with a significant more power under his belt, and then you had the negative hit going into turn 6, it makes more sense, and you could give him a lot more power there. Maybe he outclasses a bit of the power in the 5 cost range. He just is a weird 4 cost card. With Zabu, he had a small rain, like tiny adjustment, but now Zabu's been kind of messed up too. Very weird interactions here. I suppose you could do Zabu, and then you could play Sentry and Viper for 5 cost total. Yeah, it's not great. Sentry's going to be
man. It's a total trash.
He's going to be a pass. We did talk about Darkhawk a lot on my side, but would you buy Darkhawk right now?
No. I would lean towards no.
Okay.
Now Darkhawk, like I bought for 6,000. Tears, please. Thank you. F in the chat. I bought for 6,000, gets nerfed, first through the Zabu means, and then gets nerfed actually straight up. Only 1 power, though. The nerf's not that significant. I think that the Zabu package getting nerfed, though, does hit Darkhawk pretty hard because you're getting out the Rock Slide so early with even like a Wong early 2 was like super greedy. The ability to play Mystique on top of him when he was discounted was huge on turn 5. So, like, there's so much that happened with the play pattern of Darkhawk that really kind of hurt it a little bit. Now, we did see it competitively a little bit still prior to this nerf, but, oh, man, I don't know. Darkhawk feels like it needs a lot of pieces, and I feel like the nerfs are enough for me to shy away.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of you listeners are probably, or watchers of the video, are probably saying, Darkhawk's the one you've been waiting for. You've heard nothing but great things about him, and so do you buy him, right? First of all, again, pool 3, make sure you get the chunk of that complete. He's interesting, and I would say it depends on the decks you like to play. Even when I had him, I've only played him probably 20 times. And it's because I don't enjoy very, very linear deck play. And it is very obvious what you're trying to do with him. You're trying to get your right disrupt cards. And so for me, I didn't love that play style. I am enjoying him slotting into a couple of decks where you just kind of throw in a Rock Slide. I was doing like a Korg Beast or even Korg and Black Widow Beast. And that way you're still filling up some hand stuff and some deck stuff. He's just a bit weird. I would still think if you like that archetype, I think he's worth the unlock. He's still a great card, but the token, it's a lot of tokens. Out of most of them, out of the entire patch though, in the drop, I would say, the card that I would spend my tokens on, no question, especially if you like Destroy, and you know where I'm going with this already, is Big Daddy Null, man. Null is worth the tokens, and I don't know if I would have said that at 6,000, but for 3,000, he's worth it.
He was one of those cards that, like, when we first saw it get revealed, we thought was going to completely shatter the meta, right? And it didn't end up being that groundbreaking, but, like, it basically truly activates Galactus. Like, if you have Galactus and Null, you have your deck. Like, you have your list to try and run to Infinite with. I think Null is great in many Destroy decks. We talked about it on your side, how he can be utilized in conjunction with so many Destroy lists. But, like, he really does shine in Galactus. Like, that is kind of where he's slotted right now. But because of that, at the same time, Cozy, like, you don't see him really anywhere else. Like, this is, in fact, a super niche card too, right? Like, this is, I don't want to say it's a one-trick pony, but
yeah,
you can't slot him in everywhere. Like, you can almost slot in a Silver Surfer.
Yeah, so it took me about a month to truly love Null. Galactus decks, yes. Right? You're going to win your Galactus games, guys. They're going to happen with Null. I am starting to like him in so many different areas. And again, he mainly fits with Destroy. Arnim Zola and him are insane, cheating out Null, getting some early kills with Yondu. Guys, I'm telling you right now, try it if you haven't. Yondu or Wong Yondu or Yondu Beast and get a couple snipes. It builds up his cost, cheat him out on 5, and then Arnim Zola that, and you can have 2 lanes with 30, 40 power. It's a winner. It's an insane deck no one really anticipates. He's a bit weird on how he works. I have been plugging him in and making Null-based decks, and I do have a big guide coming out that I've been kind of working on with him. But I also like him for locations. Number 2, I think that you can throw in Death Domain, and you can just sacrifice cards, and it doesn't matter because you're making up for it. Also, Shang-Chi is in every deck, And so when I know they're going to Shang-Chi me, they snap, and I'm like, I only have one big card. You just throw Null right on top of that, and he just absorbs that power. And so he's such a Shang-Chi protector as well, which is why I like Null. He's got a lot of weird instances about him. I think he's worth it because you can do him in Mr. Negative decks too. Like, there's a lot of weird places. If you like Destroy, though, and how popular it is at the moment, Null is going to get a lot of free points just from people playing that archetype. If you're playing against them, you get a powered up Null. So I do think he's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of convinced me on him a little bit there, but like, still, I wonder how long it'll take him to drop down to 1,000 because he does feel incredibly niche. And I wonder if the people that were playing Galactus, that bought Galactus early, like, did they just spend the 6K on him already? Were there really that many people that bought Galactus and did not pick up Null? You know, like.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Destroy lovers, it's a no-brainer. But yes, if it, like, it's not at all a card that can fit in a bunch of decks. But if you love Destroy, I have really convinced myself. Those decks, we just talked about it with Deadpool. It's so hard to find another card to slot into Destroy decks right now. That will change when they finally, second dinner, adjust Wave and Death. I think that when Wave slots out, you can do more Destroy or whatever. But then you still want Wave with Null, so maybe she stays. I don't know. But yeah, I think if you're a Destroy fan, go Null. If not, you can pass and wait. But 3,000 tokens does feel good with the weight he carries.
Especially with Zola. I mean, that Zola interaction is wild. Like, I don't know if people realize, but like, because you destroy it, the replications get double the power, which is just like mind blowing. Like, Cozy's right. Like, you throw up like 40 power and someone's just like, what just happened? Like, if they have not seen that interaction happen with Zola, they just get taken by surprise. Like, they just don't really grasp it. It's crazy to watch.
Yeah, and Alex, if you have a Tuma, man, Atuma's your guy. I think he's perfect because you just throw him on a lane and you set him up to fail. You're trying to kill him, essentially, right? You can Shuri that, and then Null absorbs it, and it works really well with cheating out Null, too, because then you can copy that. And so Atuma, Zabu, there's a lot of deck design out there, buddy, and I know you're a big fan of Atuma.
I do love Atuma, and if he blows up half the time anyway, so if he's blowing up and you're getting value from it, then that's just a bonus, my friend. That sounds perfect to me. So let's actually close this conversation here. We got to talk about the meta, because so much has changed, Cozy. And part of that is because you got these series drops, people want to experiment with new cards, but sometimes second dinner's like, you know, we're going to buff and change some stuff. Let's buff Thanos up, let's buff Sandman. And you know what's interesting, Cozy? I do think that the Thanos buff was significant, but it looks like the major thing that shook everything up was Sandman. How much Sandman are you seeing right now? Because I'm seeing a whole lot of it.
Dude, so much, and it's awesome, but also crazy. And I also have to adjust a lot of my deck building to prepare for Sandman now. He's easier to telegraph. It's kind of interesting, right? Because we're in a meta where Galactus does really well. So when you see an Electro, you now have to play these games in your head, and you're like, okay, is he going to do Galactus? Is he going to do a new Sandman ramp? Right? Electro is easy to telegraph. Galactus, what? So now you're getting more Electro cards, and that makes it confusing. So never mind just what Sandman does. He also makes it a bit tougher for predicting the opponents, and I like that too.
You're absolutely right, Cozy. Galactus is one of those cards you always have to be fearful of. And now that you have Sandman as well, working well with Electro Ramp, you got these different options you always have to kind of be catering to, like how you're going to play. And that makes Sandman even better, because like if you're playing towards kind of blocking off that Galactus play, then Sandman gets to kind of run rampant, right? It's a pretty interesting meta right now. But let's talk about a couple decks here that I think give people a good launching point in order to kind of like start experimenting with Sandman and Sandman-based lists. Right now, I do think that Ramp has a very unique place for Sandman. I think it is the most natural fit for him. That isn't to say that there aren't going to be future lists. Like I'm working on like Luke Cage kind of ongoing lists where you can use Spectrum as a finisher with Wong, with Sandman, which I think is pretty interesting. But like those are still too experimental. I wouldn't want to show it on a screen right now. This list here for the audio viewers is Sunspot, Ebony Maw. We got Scorpion and Lizard. We have Electro, Wave. Then you got, of course, Sandman. After that, you have Arrow, Spider-Woman, Doctor Doom, Odin, and America Chavez. Now, the idea around this deck list is that essentially what you have is you have Ebony Maw for that huge power, Sunspot in order to kind of, you know, we'll say just smooth out your curve for in the event you don't draw Electro Wave, which is honestly a retreat kind of signal for you. But you do have Scorpion to kind of hit onto those pesky little stones of Thanos. The one card that I think can be subbed out, I'm trying to work on for, you know, kind of different experiments is Lizard. Lizard is an excellent card against every single deck except Thanos. It is great. It gives you, you know, priority. It does so much power. But against Thanos, it's a little weaker, and Thanos is really hot in the meta right now. So that's something worth considering if you're looking for for a sub out. But obviously you have the Electro Wave. Sandman on 5 is beautiful. Arrow, because you need to be able to counterplay Galactus. And obviously it's just a great card even on turn 6. Spider-Woman. Why Spider-Woman? Well, Spider-Man just got buffed, so don't you want to play some Spider-Woman, Cozy? But Spider-Woman's here because it actually is a great counterplay against Thanos deck lists, which are very, very popular right now. You do have Doctor Doom and Odin, which is a classic combination for Electro Wave, and of course the Chavez, to try and give you the additional opportunity to draw that Electro and Wave. Cozy, what do you think of this list? And I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on subbing out Lizard, because I think that right now, Lizard's in an interesting spot because of the popularity of Thanos.
Yeah, man. So Lizard I actually think is a decent play here because yes, Thanos is, ever present, but also your Sandman's the whole reason that he's not going to be able to fill up the board with stones unless he gets them all early. If he gets a Mind Stone, he's probably going to win that game anyway, right? Because he just has so much control from that point. However, I think there's a lot of replacement cards that work with Sandman very simply, very easily, and you've got a lot of the main offenders in here, right? Dr. Doom, Odin, just thoughtless, great, insane combo. Spider-Woman is interesting. I think she's obviously fun to play in the deck, and why not? Don't know if I'd put her in this deck just because you're going to have like few cards on the opponent's side is the goal, I guess. But if they do happen to play a lot of cards early and they kind of beat out you and getting those cards before you play Sandman, then you can punish them. And so I do like her for that reason. And sometimes it can be tricky to refine these perfectly. But dude, this is a great list. I like it a lot. I know you've been big on Ebony Maw. He's who I thought you were going to pick for your favorite one cost, not to spoil that. But Ebony Maw with Dr. Doom is a lot of fun there as well. This is a good list, man. This is a solid list. I think Cloak could also be very interesting in here. That would give you the chance to move Maw. Or if you played Sandman and you don't like your lanes, you put a Cloak in a lane that gives you the advantage rather than them, even if they can move their cards. So that's maybe another 2 costs I could fit in there.
That's a great point, and I really do like what you're saying about the Spider-Woman as well. I think right now the reason why Spider-Woman is carrying so much is because Thanos is literally like the deck right now. Thanos and Sandman are like the 2 cards, but you are right. Like when you have Sandman drop either on turn 5 or on turn 4, like that really does restrict their ability to play, but they're already going to have a lane with like 4 stones in it, or a lockjaw lane that's full, or whatever, right? Like, so I have found that Spider-Woman has been very consistent, like incredibly consistent. Like dropping is like a 5-12, like seriously, like almost every other game. It's crazy the amount of value that Spider-Woman has been getting. But still, it's also crazy just how often Thanos decks still manage to squeak out a couple cubes from you. But regardless, yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with this deck, and I think this is a very straightforward one to pilot. Like if you don't want to play Spider-Woman, Vision's a great call here. Even Captain Marvel's a great call here. There's so many options at the 5 cost that can really do work for you. And Cozy, for our second deck list here, we've got Sunspot, Daredevil, Lizard, Electro, Wave, Professor X, Sandman, Arrow, Doctor Doom, Leader, Odin, and America Chavez. Now, there's a couple things happening here, Cozy, and I want to talk you through this. Now, the first thing I want to warn, guys, don't be spending your tokens on any of this stuff because this is a highly experimental list. This is something I've not seen anyone else do. This is my own design. This is one of those brews that everyone talks about, and I actually really like it. But in the process of landing on this list, many cubes were donated. This list, this particular version is the one that's starting to claw back my rank now after I donated so much. But let me explain how it works here because I think this is really interesting. It all starts with Daredevil. You have the Daredevil into the Electro and Wave, and that's a pretty interesting thing. But when you think about Daredevil, you're usually thinking about, well, what are the 5 costs I can use? You got the Gamoras, you got the Professor X's, you got the Hobgoblins. That's all good. But like Professor X, I was thinking about, even if you ramp, Professor X still plays such a unique role that you could use that card at any time. But if you've got Sandman on 4, on turn 5, you got that Daredevil effect. What about Leader? What about Leader, Cozy? Is that the card that everyone's sleeping on right now? Because now you have the Daredevil effect. You're ramped. You can play a 6 cost on turn 5, and you have the predictive element of Daredevil. With Sandman on the board on turn 4, that Leader play, it's an immediate retreat because now you've played 2 cards. Leader's a 6-7. You've matched whatever they play on the other side, and suddenly they can't compete in those lanes because it's a Sandman game. They just can't.
Dude, I love the Leader here. We'll see how it works in practice a lot more on the ladder, but I do, like, in theory, right? What are you doing? You're outpacing the opponent's cards because now that he's 7 power, right? You're putting out a lot of power yourself, and then you're copying that, and as long as it's not like some combo, dependent thing on 5, but you get to see what it is too, man. I love it. I love that you can Odin it. I think it's super sneaky. Maybe I would throw in something like either White Tiger, another 5 costs that I could ramp into that has an on-reveal effect to maybe capitalize when you don't want to use Leader would be the only change I would make. But dude, I think the leader could maybe work. It could maybe work. It's with the Sandman interaction. Definitely fun. The Daredevil naturally is just working great across the board right now. But to be able to lock down a lane early and then you force them into what to do.
I can see taking out the Doom and Odin package and adding like a Magneto and another value 5-drop. The other thing that I was experimenting with was instead of like a Sunspot, you'd have like an opening, like you'd have like Hood into Viper to try and discourage left lane play them in the left lane. You have that location right off the bat anyway to try and keep them on the right side to amplify the opportunity to play leader. Debris can do that too with Viper. So like I was experimenting with all these different things. But ultimately, it came right down to just being able to play something a little more predictable. Whereas, like, you have Daredevil, you have Prof X. Even if you have an extra mana, Prof X still does something. Like, it has a job that it does, and it does it really well. And with Sandman as a 5/5, you could be winning the Sandman lane. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Sandman could be winning a location on turn 4. And on turn 5, you have the Daredevil that can shut down Professor X. And remember, with Sandman, they can't play multiple cards. There's going to be an open lane.
You're right. And this is what I love Marvel Snap just for the deck creation process and like how it comes to like how people come around to making their decks and how it makes sense in their heads in a sense and what they're aiming to get down and get through with it. This is really cool. I think too, maybe for low cost, you're mentioning Lizard. The more I look at this, you could add in, I've seen Psylocke be added for 3 ramp options. That way you always have a way to play one of these 5-cost cards. But also, just with Professor X to give it a little bit more dependability, and it's going to work with Sandman, I think Mr. Fantastic could slot in here, because then you could have a little bit of that extra power, or let's say you throw it on and you don't get the lockdown, they have you by a point, you just sneak in there with your Mr. Fantastic for the tempo there. But yeah, dude, I think this is a fun list, and for the list I've ran with Sandman, myself, Alex, the main one, and I think he works in a lot right now, Ramp is a big one. But for people with not a lot of cards, we talked about it a bit. It needed just a touch up here. The Meta Destroyer deck that I've got going on, or just in general, the Destroyer archetype, fits perfectly. You don't have to do the ramp option. I think it works well with what we're trying to go on here. It has Ant-Man, Armor, Electro, Captain America, Wave, Namor, which you could definitely swap out. I highly recommend it. Iron Man, Claw, Sandman, Spectrum, Onslaught, Destroyer. And this is your classic Iron Man, Claw, and Onslaught win condition, or your Spectrum pop-off, or your Destroyer lane with other card interactions. So this is where I kind of find a nice home, because Sandman, naturally on 4 here, Alex, I think it's just a great spot to be in. But dude, this is cool. It's fun to see that we typically film this the day after patches. And so immediately, these are just like the first fresh designs of these new card packages.
I was actually like working very, very hard on this deck list I'm showing you today. And like, I think the germ of a very successful unique list is there. I think it's like 3 cards off. I think like, for instance, I think that Odin Doom probably have to go, but I'm not quite sure how to replace them yet. I think that I actually really like your Mr. Fantastic tech, honestly. I think I like that way better than anything I came up with. So like, I think the germ is there. And I think that this is a deck that like, give me a week. And then we'll talk. We'll come back.
And that's how it usually works, guys. So, like, do know that as well, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I make a deck and I'm like, this is it. I found it. And then I test it. I'm like, well, this card, as much as I want to love the small niche thing I can do with it, it's got to go. Or, like, let's say Arrow. I could put her in every list. I'm like, besides her being Arrow, does she need to be in there? Can I put one more? So, it's interesting because I always refine mine a few times, man. And that's one of the great things about Snap, man. And so, definitely, man. I mean, hey, you came... You crushed it in that tournament, so you definitely know what you're doing, and I think this is a good deck, bud.
Yeah, and it's great that you bring up the idea of like switching one card. Guys, Marvel Snap is a 12-card game. One card can change the entire identity of a deck list. It really can. Like right now, you know what I think is one of the best cards in the Thanos list? It's Leech. When Leech gets thrown into Lockjaw, it's like, oh my God. When Leech gets pulled out of Lockjaw, you're like, oh my God. Like there's no time where Leech comes out where you're ever happy about it, and it's always coming out on those lists. It's one card, and what it does, it protects from Shang-Chi because it gets blown up in your hand. Like there's so much happening. One card can make a deck list completely different.
Yes.
And I think I'm searching for that one card still with this one.
Absolutely, man. These are great decks, though, and definitely there's a lot of fun Sandman meta decks that you guys can run as well. Feel free to experiment. Zoo decks kind of work with them, getting a lot of low-cost cards. The main thing with Sandman, guys, is that you want to try to get some nice board presence early. So, you know, your Maximus, obviously Lizard was in there for that reason. Sunspot works naturally for a lot of people just with the Electro. You want to go that route, or you want to go spreading wide, swarming the board, And for me, that's why I think Ultron Patriot Sandman is one of my favorites as well. You know, we can go ahead and move on. But very fun card. Excited to see how it evolves, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in our next Snapchat. So, Alex, it looks like we've got one last topic today, and that is top tournament cards. And I know that we've talked about this before, but I think this is actually important. Battle mode's important, competitive scene's important. So each month we will probably highlight cards that we're liking in battle mode tournament play, and you just came fresh off a tournament, my man. And so talk to me. Give me cards that you think are just great in tournament play and ones that you're kind of leaning back to.
All right, so this is a really interesting topic because I did just come from the New York tournament. Literally an absolutely wonderful experience. We talked about it before. And one of the things that really stood out was there were certain cards that, like, when it comes right down to it, they're the cards you want in your hand. They're the cards you want in your deck. Like, forget about everything else. If you have these cards, you have something. Like, you have a play. You have a win condition. And there was just some that really stood out, that were consistent across all the deck lists, that were consistent across all the games. And when it comes right down to it, they were the cards that won and decided brackets. Right off the top of my head, there were two that really, really stood out, that like were completely meta-defining in the tournament. Remember, you're sitting across from the person you're playing with. I could physically look Dara in the eyes and see his face as he snaps on me, right? So like, it is a very different experience, Cozy. Do you know what card was like the number one card in the tournament, where like by far the most cubes were won and lost with? It's your Bay. It's your Bay. You know exactly who it is.
My wife. I cannot believe. Bring her up. I cannot believe she survived the patch, man. Yep.
Of course she survived the patch because she's the primary win condition against Shuri. And honestly, no one was playing Shuri. Almost everyone brought a Shuri deck, but because everyone had an Arrow list, no one wanted to bring Shuri against Arrow. So everyone was playing their secondary lists, right? And I had to bring Arrow because I had to deal with Shuri, but no one actually ended up playing Shuri, so I just had a really good card. Like, Arrow was by far the most critical card in the tournament. By far. Like, it's not even close. We're going to talk about a second place. It's not even close.
Yeah.
Having Arrow and using Arrow on turn 5 meant I didn't have an Arrow for turn 6. You know how, like, insane that is to think about? How many times I was sitting there thinking, if I had Arrow on turn 6, I would win this game, but I had to use it on turn 5 already. Like, it comes to the point, it crossed my mind, I was like, do I need to get Absorbing Man for turn 6 so I could just Arrow twice? Like, what do we have to do here? Like, Arrow was that impactful. I'm telling you, this card was critical in the tournament.
We talked about top 10 cards last week, right? And she's my number one. She's been my number one for a long time. Honestly, early beta is when I've been using Arrow, and I've been tooting the horn ever since. And it's just clear as day that where she stands right now to not only, again, she does the two purposes. She's a tech card, and then she also has so much usability. And I'm not surprised, man. And it's going to be interesting. My guess is they didn't balance patch her because they have to figure it out. It's not going to be an easy fix. I've seen people want her at 3 costs to just be a tech card. I'm like, whoa. Some people want her in a 6 cost, or 3 power, sorry. Some people want her as a 6 cost. Some people want her, as a 4-0. I've seen. She's going to be interesting. All I know is her ability is so cracked that it's always going to have her prevalent, especially in these tournaments. And it's cool to see that the good cards in the ladder are going to be the good cards in the tournament, like Shuri and Arrow. But then you also just have other cards that uniquely fit in that we've talked about before, the Agent Coulsons, the card producers. Alex, we talked about when we were talking about our favorite cards in Cable. And I think Cable's an interesting one. It doesn't have to exclusively be Cable because there's other cards that do things like it. Like Mantis, I guess, who's a bit better. She's not great, but she's a bit better in battle mode. But Cable, man. Cable, the fact of battle mode is that first round, Alex, you can speak to it more than I can, at least in live, but in my experience, that first round is huge on just data collecting and just working through what they're running. And you can Cable each turn and just kind of each round and kind of see the deck that they're running and get your own deck list, right?
Cable's insane because like you're literally finding out, like there's so much key like counterplay in the tournament, and when you're pulling the opponent's card and now you have one of their tools and you know their deck list in and out, you know their play patterns because you've been facing them over and over again, it can be completely game shattering. Like there was an example during the NYC tournament while I was actually casting, it was Coco 4 versus D-Money, and one of them played Cable and took the other one's Shang-Chi. And that was so critical because then the other person was like, okay, well, they just played Shang-Chi and I'm going to play my Devil Dinosaur. There's no way he knows that he has their Shang-Chi.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Ever, yeah.
There's no way of knowing it. Because how do you account for like what's like you have their deck list, like you wrote down their deck list, but suddenly they pull your Shang-Chi out and they punch out your Devil Dinosaur and you're like, great, right? Like that is like, what if that goes to 8 cubes? Right? The money's on the line. Top 3 finish. Like that's literally how impactful that cable pull was. Yeah. It was crazy.
I think honestly a package I might start running is just going Yondu into cable into something with Beast involved. And then all of a sudden you're having a free Yondu, you play again. You have a cable worth 1 that you get to play again. And there's 4 cards that you get information on and you just wipe out for only up to turn 3, right? And sure, okay, maybe you're a bit behind on the power presence, but A, they could have a bad hand and you just got to do all that for nothing. Or B, you just completely get to see what's on your side of the board now, what they don't have. I'm telling you, I think that's going to be a bit more tournament packages than just the staple, I'm going to play Shuri. But then we also saw a good presence in things like Devil Dinosaur. So a lot of great tournament cards out there. Alex, do you have another one?
When I was originally designing my deck list, so it was we didn't know each other's deck list until they were all revealed at the same time. Okay. So like all 16 competitors, we submitted our deck list and then they were all revealed at the same time. We had no idea. The only rule was you had to submit 2 decks. They couldn't have repeat cards. In my head, I thought that one of the most popular cards of the tournament was going to be Cosmo. I assumed Cosmo was going to be very popular considering Shuri and etc. Well, it wasn't Cosmo. That wasn't the top tech card. It was Shang-Chi. Yeah. Every single person brought Shang-Chi. There was some version of Shang-Chi in there, and almost nobody was willing to play their deck if it didn't have Shang-Chi in it. Now, because I had my secondary deck was a Valkyrie deck, which in my opinion, Valkyrie is kind of a Shang-Chi in some way, right? I was running Valkyrie Cerebro, so I literally could run Shang-Chi in Cerebro 3, but literally because of the way that the tournament worked, I couldn't. So it had to be Valkyrie because like that's how I deal with the friggin' Shuri because I can just Valkyrie it, right? Mm-hmm. That was the tech there. But like Shang-Chi had to be in the list. And whenever you're playing a card, like I was actively like, okay, do I set this guy up like for Shang-Chi? Is he going to get blown up? Shang-Chi hasn't been revealed yet. Like you're literally playing around 2 cards the whole time. You're playing around, do they have Arrow? Have they played Arrow? Have they played Shang-Chi? It's those 2 cards that are in your head the entire time. Shang-Chi, Arrow. Okay, Arrow's played. Still got to think about Shang-Chi here. It's crazy. It's crazy how impactful those 2 specific cards were.
I'm sure.
Literally the most meta-defining in the entire tournament.
Yeah, and so it's interesting, too, as more tournaments happen to see which cards kind of tend to pop up on the list a bit more. And I love seeing the, not deck breakdown, but the card breakdown. And what was the highest? And again, we've said it, but it was Devil, Arrow, and Shang, I think. As the most included cards in the tournament. Also, we've said it before, but Sunspot, Thor, these cards that just, you're dancing. You don't know if they're going to get that extra power. You don't know what they're going to try to do with that or if they're going to play on top of it. So a lot of head games are involved in general. And to me, that is like, we've always highlighted one of my favorite parts about Snap. And that's why battle mode is just so dang fun because you get to see that so often and it's continual. And I tell you, it's nuts. How was the going into the last rounds and you could progress what was the longest round or match that you were in? Did you get to round 9?
I watched Nina and Felicity go literally to 1 cube final, like just sudden death. That was insane. Eggs did it as well, like twice, I think. It was crazy. Like you'd be so surprised how often these games came like down right to the wire, where even the smallest mistake would cost you the game, right? It was absolutely insane. But Cozy, we cannot finish this discussion without talking about by far the most meta-defining card of the tournament that everyone was losing their mind over. It was in the game-winning deck. And Cozy, if I pretended for a second like this card was not an absolute god-tier card, I would be lying to you. You set up the 6 cost, but you're wrong, sir. It's the 1 cost we got to go to.
I'm going to find him. I know it.
The top rope. It's M'Baku who came in for the victory. M'Baku was by far one of the most enticing cards of the tournament. Ordinary Harry literally had M'Baku in his list, and I remember watching him in the finals against D-Money, and I said to myself, if M'Baku wins, I'm gonna have to bring it up on the Snapchat. Cozy and I, we owe an apology to M'Baku. We literally defined M'Baku as complete trash tier, and then Ordinary Harry goes out with an M'Baku Thanos list and completely decimates an entire tournament to win it. M'Baku was god tier. He was so good.
I need a viewer, somebody in the comment section, to find the Snapchat where I said to Alex that I'm going to wait for the day that he loves M'Baku, and I want to see the day come full circle. It's out there, guys. Go find it. and because M'Baku's getting his sweet justice finally. He's been avoiding any type of oh no, I do have a variant. This is even better. Look at this one. That's the creepiest thing ever. I love the face there.
It's literally from the top rope.
From the top rope in Baku. Great stuff, though, guys. I know that a lot of you don't know anything about like the tournaments and who these people are, but great stuff to see this scene develop in Marvel Snap in general, and excited to see it down the road and how the competitive scene continues to evolve. They've already announced that this is what they're working on. A competitive mode that isn't what we have already is going to be coming up. So we're excited to see that. I think that's going to be the next patch, and so looking forward to it.
Yeah, we keep talking about how like it's easy to forget that Marvel Snap, Cozy, is still relatively so new. Like this game is still in its infancy. Like it took Hearthstone a decade to get to where it is now. Can you imagine what Marvel Snap's going to look like 10 years from now, Cozy? How blessed are we to be in this community, honestly? Like it's only just getting started.
Yeah, it's insane where it is so early on and just the impact it's had on non-card players, card players, and just gamers in general. Super excited for the scene, buddy, and to see where it goes.
And with that being said, guys, I think now's the time that we have to thank everyone for all their support. The reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts really bring joy to our hearts. We really appreciate everybody's support. The comments, the likes, everything on YouTube as well. Guys, we appreciate you so much. And at the end of the day, Cozy, I consider myself so fortunate that I get to sit across from you, digitally of course, and discuss something that I'm so passionate about.
Salt of the earth over here, guys. Salt of the earth. No, Alex, it's cool. And people don't know this. We were FaceTiming whenever you were at the event. I mean, guys, Alex and I are cut from the same cloth. Love this guy right here and excited to do it every week, bud. So excited for next week and looking forward to it.
And I got great news too, guys, because if you want more Marvel Snap content, if you're looking for more Snapchat, right in the middle of the screen there, on the other side there, we got Cozy's version of the Snapchat. We're going to be talking about the winners and losers. We're going to talk about the deadliest Deadpool decks and, of course, your favorite cards at every cost. One of my favorite segments. So click that link and we'll see you in the next Marvel Snapchat episode.